They left her tied for the wolves until a dusty rider said, "She has a home with me now." The wind came in hot and bitter off the flats, dragging a skin of dust over the broken scrub. Somewhere behind it, thunder muttered low, not a promise, just a warning. From the west, a single rider moved slow through the shimmering heat, his hat pulled low, the sun catching silver along the barrel slung across his saddle. He didn't look like trouble, but the kind of man who carried it with him, like trail dust, or a wound that never closed. His horse shifted beneath him, snorting once as they crested a rise. The rider pulled up. Below, in the shallow dip of a dried-out creek bed, something stuck out against the land, something too still, too human. A post. A shape slumped against it. He clicked his tongue and started down, the rifle now in hand. The girl was tied to the splintered fence post, with what looked like a length of bridle leather, arms bound behind her, ankles crossed and cracked from sun. She didn't lift her head. Her dress was torn and stiff with dust, the color long beaten out by the wind. No shoes. Skin blistered where the sun had burned through. She breathed barely. He dismounted without a word, boots crunching dry soil. The place was silent except for the wind and a single creak from the warped post every time she swayed. He scanned the horizon. Tracks led off east. 5 riders, maybe 6, by the depth and scatter of hooves. No sign of a camp. No sign of a fight. Just her. She stirred. Not fully. Just enough to let him know she was awake. "They said the wolves would come at dark," she whispered, not looking at him. "Said they'd take what was left." The rider crouched beside her, taking a small knife from his belt. "Wolves won't come," he said. "How do you know?" He met her eyes. They were red-rimmed, raw. No tears left. "I'm here." He sliced the strap with one smooth motion. She didn't fall. She just stayed there, too proud or too broken to collapse. He reached out, caught her elbow, and helped her to her feet. The wind picked up then, rolling a ghost of dust across the dry wash. He glanced up at the sky. Thunder again, closer now. But no rain, not here. Not ever. "You got a name?" he asked. She didn't answer. He didn't push. "Come on." She took 2 steps and nearly went down. He caught her again, steady as stone, slipped her arm over his shoulder, and led her to the horse. "You can't," she started, but her voice broke. "I can," he said, "and I am." She didn't fight him. He helped her up behind the saddle. She winced but said nothing. He mounted ahead of her, and they turned back the way he came, west, into the wind. As they crested the rise, she looked back once. The post stood empty now, swaying in the heat, rope trailing like a dead snake. "You alone?" she asked after a while, her voice dry as old wood. "Always." A silence settled between them, heavy but not cruel. "What's your name?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Does it matter?" She leaned her forehead against his back, too tired to argue. The sun dipped behind a canyon wall, casting long shadows across the flats. Coyotes yipped in the distance, sharp and hungry, the kind of sound that made men move faster, even when they were out of reach. The rider didn't hurry. When they stopped for water near a cracked trough at the base of a rusted windmill, the girl slipped down on her own, legs shaking. She drank like she hadn't in days. Maybe she hadn't. He gave her a jerky strip from his saddlebag. She didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. "What happens now?" she asked, not meeting his eyes. "Now," he said, checking the rifle again, "we follow tracks." She stiffened. "You going after them?" He looked toward the east. The sky was turning the color of old bruises. "I'm not chasing. Just riding that way." "Why?" "Because they left you breathing." The girl was quiet. He took out a match, struck it against his boot, and lit a thin roll of tobacco. The flame glowed briefly, then faded in the rising dark. "You one of those men?" she asked suddenly, low. "No." "Then what are you?" He exhaled smoke, slow. "Dust," he said, with a reason. The coyotes cried again, farther now. The windmill creaked once, then stilled. They rode on. They rode without speaking, the desert sliding past in hues of rust and bone. Her arms looped loose around his waist now, not from trust, but from the kind of surrender that came when there was nothing left to hold on to. He didn't glance back, but he felt her watching everything. By midday, they crossed the ridge and dropped into a cracked basin scattered with mesquite and snake grass. Buzzards hung low overhead. A faint trail twisted through the dry hills, and the tracks were still there, wide-hooved, deep messy. 6 riders, maybe more, moving without care. Men who didn't believe in consequences. The rider slowed near a boulder shaped like a crouching man. He dismounted, crouched low, brushing fingers over a fresh boot print. The girl sat still on the horse. How close? He didn't answer. Instead, he ran a gloved hand over the packed dirt, then stood. Why follow? She asked. You already got me out. Didn't get them out. She flinched at that, just slightly. He checked the rifle, then remounted. They moved on. Later, under a half-dead cottonwood, they stopped. He let her drink from his canteen. She took a careful sip, then handed it back without a word. He didn't press her, but when she sat with her knees pulled to her chest, back against a rock, she said, You ain't a bounty hunter. No. You ain't law. No. So what are you doing? He looked at her a long time. They made you a thing, he said finally. I don't let that kind of thing ride away clean. The girl lowered her head, voice barely there. You kill men like that before. He didn't answer. A dust devil twisted far off in the plain, flinging grit and broken stalks high into the afternoon glare. As they saddled up again, the girl asked, Where are they going? Dry Creek. She stiffened behind him. Her voice cracked. You sure? Tracks head straight. She gripped the saddle horn tighter. They know folks in Dry Creek. The kind that'll cover their trail. You won't find them there. He nodded like he'd expected it. I ain't scared, she muttered, maybe to herself. You should be, he said, but don't let it stop you. They passed a rusted wind pump leaning like a drunk. The sky was darker now, not just the sun lowering, but something heavier in the clouds. That night they made camp in the crook of a dry wash, sheltered from the worst of the wind. The girl gathered sticks with shaking hands. He lit the fire. No big flame, just enough for warmth. She sat close, pulled her knees in. Her voice was stronger than before. They called me Callie, she said, like it mattered. I worked near Sutter's Mill. Wash sheets. Clean boots. He didn't speak. One of them came in. Said he'd pay double if I'd ride out to the next town. Deliver something. I figured why not. Silence. Then, one of them slapped my mouth when I spoke too much. Said my name didn't matter now. The rider tossed another stick onto the fire, eyes on the flame. I remember thinking, it don't take long to lose a name. He looked at her. Not soft. Not cold. Just seeing her clear. It's still yours, he said. She didn't thank him. By morning, the sky was heavy and the air had weight. The kind of weight that said thunder was coming. He broke camp fast. The tracks had curved off trail, heading toward a canyon draw. She mounted up behind him. This time, she didn't hold on. Just balanced back straight, eyes sharp. They'll see us coming, she said. He nodded. They'll kill you first. Maybe. She looked sideways at him. You got a plan. He reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a folded strip of cloth, and handed it to her. What's this? Scarf. You'll walk in ahead of me. You're theirs, right? Let them believe it. She stared at him, hand tightening on the cloth. You trust me to do that? No. Then why? 'Cause it's the only way. She held his eyes a moment longer. Then she nodded, tied the scarf over her hair, and said nothing more. Just before midday, they came to a rise overlooking a shallow canyon. Down below, a camp sprawled across the stone, wagons, horses, smoke. 6 men, maybe 7, laughing, drunk. One of them wore a hat she'd recognize anywhere. She inhaled through her teeth. That's him. Voss. The rider studied the camp, then handed her his pistol. You shoot before I say. I don't come for you, he said. You wait, you stay standing, and I'll be there. She held the gun awkwardly, like it was heavier than it looked. Then she dismounted and walked down the trail. The wind rose with her steps, pushing at her back. Below, Voss stood by the fire, flask in hand. He turned as she approached. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, grin splitting his face. "You come crawling back." The others rose, laughing. One whistled. Another grabbed a rope. She stopped a few paces short. "Didn't come crawling," she said. "Came walking." He narrowed his eyes. "Who let you go?" She didn't answer. Behind them, a bird called once, a short, sharp sound from the ridge. Voss's smile faded. Then the shot came. Quick. Clean. One of the men dropped. The camp exploded. Guns came out. Yelling. Scrambling. The girl hit the ground, crawling for cover. Bullets tore through dust near her elbow. Voss roared, diving behind a barrel. She turned, hard hammering, pistol trembling in her hand. Up the ridge, the rider moved like he'd done it 100 times. One step, one shot. Another man fell, screaming. Then silence. Just wind. The girl blinked through grit and powder smoke. Voss was gone, nowhere to be seen. She got to her knees, hands shaking harder now. From the edge of camp, the rider strode down calm, like he had all the time in the world. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, but her breath was jagged. "He ran," she said. "Coward." He looked toward the canyon trail. "He'll run to Dust Hook," the rider muttered. "That's where they all go when they're scared." She stood. "Then we ride." The sky cracked above them, a deep, rolling sound. The storm was coming. They reached Dust Hook at noon the next day. It wasn't marked by a sign, only by a row of leaning buildings the wind hadn't yet knocked down. A saloon, a livery, a post office that hadn't seen a letter since Lincoln wore a beard. Dust Hook had the look of a place where things didn't die. They just dried up and disappeared. The girl's scarf was gone now, her hair loose and wild. She rode beside the rider, not behind him. Her eyes never stopped moving. The rider reined in outside the saloon. "They'll be inside," he said. "How do you know?" "'Cause Dust Hook only has one kind of shade." He dismounted. She followed. Boots hit dust. Doors creaked without touch. They stepped in. The saloon was dim and quiet except for the slow turn of a ceiling fan that hadn't worked in years. A few men sat at scattered tables. Eyes lifted, then dropped again. Behind the bar stood a woman with gray streaks in her braids and a look that could sand splinters from wood. She froze when she saw the rider. "You came back," she said. He nodded once. "He's upstairs," she whispered. "Got 2 men with him. Maybe 3. The girl's fingers curled. The rider turned to her. "You wait here." "No," she said. He hesitated. Saw something in her face. Not defiance. Not pride. Fire. He gave a slight nod. "Don't hesitate." The girl drew the pistol from her coat pocket. "Steady now." They climbed the stairs together. The hallway at the top was narrow, with fading wallpaper that peeled like sunburnt skin. The second door was cracked open. Laughter spilled out, Voss's voice, thick with drink. "And I told her, 'Hell, you ain't worth the rope we used, but we needed the practice.'" Laughter. The rider pushed the door open. The laughter died. Voss stood with his back to the window, glass in hand. 2 men flanked the bed. One reached for his gun. Too slow. The rider fired once, shoulder shot. Man screamed, dropped. The second froze. Voss's grin was already fading. "Well, hell," he said, stepping forward. "Didn't think you had the sand to ride this far." The rider didn't move. "You gonna shoot me in front of the girl?" Voss asked. "That's your style now. You left her tied for wolves." She wasn't worth the food she ate. The girl raised her gun. Both hands. Voss snorted. "You think you got the guts, little girl? You think pulling that trigger makes you free?" She didn't blink. "I remember your mother," he added quieter. "Cried just like you did. Begged same way. You got her in you. All knees and tears." That's when the girl fired. The bullet missed his heart, but not by much. He dropped the glass, staggered. The rider didn't move. Didn't blink. Just watched. Voss fell to his knees, hands pressed to the wound. "God," he gasped. "She shot me." He looked up at the rider. "You said you'd bring her safe. You said." "I said I'd bring her out," the rider said, voice like gravel. "I never said she wouldn't see justice." Voss collapsed. The silence after was thick and waiting. The second man still stood near the bed. Hands up. The rider turned to him. You can run, he said, or you can stay. Just know which road ends sooner. The man dropped his pistol and left without a word. The girl stood over Voss, pistol still raised. The rider laid a hand on her shoulder. It's done. She didn't lower the gun. He was never going to stop, she said. I know. He'd have come again. I know. Finally, she let the gun fall. They left the room, without looking back. Downstairs, the woman behind the bar was wiping a clean glass that didn't need wiping. She didn't speak, just nodded once. Outside, the sun had started to slip behind the low hills. Shadows stretched across the main street, like long fingers. A horse neighed from somewhere behind the livery. Dust Hook had grown quieter. As they reached the hitch rail, the girl said, It's not over, is it? No. Someone will come. Maybe. She stared at the dry road ahead. What do I do now? You ride, he said. You don't look back. Her voice was different when she asked, You done running from things? He tightened the cinch on his saddle. No, just better at facing 'em when they catch up. They mounted. As they turned toward the edge of town, a voice called after them. You know they'll want blood for this, the barrowman shouted. The rider didn't look back. They can want all they like, he said. The girl smiled, just a flicker, and they rode on. At the last bend before the land dropped toward the canyon, she spoke. You knew him before. Yes. You ever ride with him? Once. She looked at him. So why me? Why now? He didn't answer. She didn't ask again. A hawk cried overhead. The land stretched out before them, cruel, empty, beautiful. Dust Hook shrank behind them, just a scar on the earth now. They didn't speak for a long time, but something passed between them in the silence. Something not yet said, but felt, like thunder in the bones before the rain ever falls. The wind changed the moment they crossed the bluff out of Dust Hook. Cooler, wetter, but it didn't matter much. Rain didn't fall here, it only threatened. They rode in silence until the town was gone behind a rise. Then the girl spoke. Back there, when he said my mother cried. The rider didn't look at her. You don't owe me the memory. I ain't giving it for you. He nodded, kept riding. They found a patch of shade near a canyon wall, where the wind couldn't cut so hard. The rider slipped from the saddle slow, favoring his left side. Blood had dried into the fabric of his shirt, dark and stiff. A graze, but deeper than he'd said. The girl slid down beside him. You need to rest. No time. She reached for his saddlebag and pulled out the bandages he kept too clean to be old. He didn't protest when she lifted the shirt, cleaned the cut, and wrapped it tight. I seen worse, she said, not bragging, just truth. I believe you. You got someone waiting? Somewhere this ends. He shook his head. Had a place once. Too many ghosts now. What happened? Same thing that always happens. Men with more want than sense. She tied off the bandage. They take something. He looked at her. Everything. They camped that night, near an old telegraph line. The poles still stood, leaning like drunks, wires long since cut or stolen. The land was flat for miles, and the fire was small enough not to be seen. The girl didn't sleep. Neither did he. After a long while, she asked, How many men have you killed? Too many. Were they all bad? Most, and the ones that weren't. They were standing in the wrong place when the wrong man called his hand. She nodded like she understood. Because she did. You killed today, he said. She didn't answer. It'll sit with you. I ain't sorry. Don't mean it won't sit. She looked at him, eyes glinting in the firelight. You sorry for the ones you put down? He thought on it. Some. Why keep going? 'Cause some men never stop until someone makes them. She took that in. Let it settle. By morning, the storm had passed north, leaving only clouds and the kind of silence that sits too close to the chest. They rode early. Around midday, they came across a small homestead, burned out, half sunk into the dirt. The well was dry. A child's boot lay near the gate. No graves. No signs of life. The girl walked among the ruins without a word. The rider didn't follow her in. When she came back, her face was tight. They do this. He didn't have to ask who. Could be. What if they come again? What if there's more of them? There are. Then what? He swung into the saddle. Then we ride ahead of him. She didn't move. Callie, he said quietly, there's no going back. She looked at the burned homestead again, then climbed up after him. They reached a canyon pass before sundown. The trail split. One led toward the flatlands. One turned up into the high ridges. The rider reined in. There's a ranch up that way, he said. Half dead. Fence mostly gone. Barn leans like it's tired. Belonged to a friend. Still does. No. Died 3 winters back. I look after it now and then, when I ain't running. Is it safe? No place is safe, but it's away from the world. The girl stared at the upper trail. Then, I want to see it. He nodded, nudged his horse forward. The trail was rough. Hoof scraped rock, stirred old dust. The sun dropped behind a ridge, just as the ranch came into view. It wasn't much. One shack, one barn, a few wind-beaten pines trying to hold the line against erosion. Fence broken in 2 places. Water tank empty. But it stood. The girl dismounted slow, walked toward the house. She touched the doorframe, then stepped inside. The rider stayed back. A minute passed. Then she came out and said, "It smells like wood and dirt, like something that ain't left yet." He nodded. Man who built it did it with his own hands. Took him 10 years. Lost 2 kids and a wife in the same winter. Still kept building. She turned to look at him. Why? He shrugged. Maybe 'cause it's what he had left. They spent the night inside. No fire, just blankets and breath. Sometime in the dark, she whispered, "You could leave. You got your justice." He didn't answer. You could ride off. Find something else to chase. Still no answer. "I won't stop you," she said. His voice came low. "You won't have to." They didn't speak again till morning. He stood out by the fence as the first light hit the ridge. The girl walked up behind him, holding the pistol he'd let her keep. "I cleaned it," she said. "Good. I want to learn better." He looked at her. "I want to know how to shoot straight. How to defend what's mine. If I'm gonna live, I don't want to just survive." He studied her. Not a girl anymore. Something else. Something forged. "You will," he said. She waited. "You'll teach me." He looked at the broken fence, then at the land beyond. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'll teach you." They stood there a long time as the sun broke full over the canyon, cutting gold across the dirt. No words, but something settled in the quiet. An understanding. There was no peace here, not really. Not with the men still out there. Not with all that had happened. But there was a place. A start. And that had to be enough for now. The wind came off the ridge easy that morning. Just a breeze lifting dust across the open yard. The girl, Callie, stood in the doorway of the cabin, sleeves rolled, jaw set, a length of old rope in one hand, the other braced on her hip. The rider leaned against the fence he'd been mending since dawn, watching the sunlight touch the dry fields beyond. His shirt clung with sweat, a streak of blood brown, and dried from the shoulder. But he looked steady, grounded. "You ever gonna fix that roof?" she asked, nodding to the barn. "Probably not," he said. "Why not?" "It's only half broken. I can work with that." She smiled at that. It came easy now, without effort. They'd been at the ranch 3 days. In that time, the silence had changed, no longer full of what they didn't say, but filled with work. Real things. A water line patched. A trough cleaned. A fence post straightened. She was learning to ride alone. Learning to shoot, too. Not because she wanted to be violent. Because she didn't want to be helpless. A hawk cried overhead. The rider looked up. Something in him always watched the sky first, like he didn't quite trust peace. Callie walked over, dragging the rope. "You said you used to grow vegetables here." "Grew what I could. Dust took most of it." "You ever think of planting again?" "I think about a lot of things," he said. She studied him. "Why don't you?" He looked down at the dirt, then out to where the land cracked into scrub and stone. "'Cause some things don't grow back." She didn't say anything to that, just nodded once, slow. Then she said, "A rider's coming." He turned. Across the open trail, a lone figure moved fast over the ridge, kicking up dust, sun catching on a saddle horn. Too far to tell who, but close enough to feel the change in the air. Callie didn't ask what they should do. She just walked back inside, came out with her rifle. The rider stepped away from the fence, calm. "You know how to use that yet?" he asked. "Not enough to shoot clean, but enough to make someone think twice." He nodded. "That's enough." They waited. The rider in the distance slowed near the boundary line. The man wore a thick coat, despite the heat. Rifle across his back. No badge. No brand. The kind of man who rode not for justice, but to make sure justice didn't find someone else. The rider stepped forward. "Looking for something?" The man reined in. "Looking for a girl and a drifter. Dust Hook said you killed a man. Said there's trouble brewing." The wind kicked a little harder. The rider didn't flinch. "Dust Hook says a lot of things." The stranger leaned on the horn of his saddle. "They want the girl. Say she's property." "She's not." "They'll pay for her." "She's not for sale." The man's gaze swept to Callie. She held the rifle across her chest, not raised, just ready. The stranger shifted. "You keep her, they'll come. Bigger men. More than me." The rider nodded. "Then they come." The man looked at him long, then at her. And maybe, just maybe, he saw it. What she'd been, what she'd become. He touched his brim. "Ain't my fight." He turned his horse and rode off, back the way he came. They stood there a long while after the dust settled. Callie lowered the rifle. "You think he'll tell them?" "Yes." "You scared?" "No." She looked toward the sun, rising clean over the far ridge, then to the place beyond it. Empty land, waiting. "I want to stay," she said. "You don't have to." "I want to." He watched her a long moment, then said, "All right." She stepped beside him and looked out where the stranger had disappeared. "You really think they'll come?" "Maybe not tomorrow, but someday." She nodded. "Then let's be ready." He raised an eyebrow. "You mean you want to stay and patch fences?" "I mean I want to stay and make them think twice." He smiled, the faintest edge of it. Callie turned toward the barn. "I'll fix the roof if you teach me to ride like you do." "That a trade?" "It's a deal." She walked off with the rope, already measuring in her head. The rider stood a moment longer. He looked east, where thunder still rolled somewhere over the horizon. Not close, but coming. Then he looked west, where the sun rose gold across a broken land. A land that had taken everything from him once, and given something back. He took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair, then set it back. Behind him, the hammering began, soft and sharp. A rhythm, a promise. He breathed in deep. The air smelled like dust, and something starting.